Hello guys, welcome back to ESENtaxa. Andrea Papito here. In this video, I'm going to explain you how to pay less taxes in Italy, skipping the RPF taxation, which is basically the taxation on individuals, the famous taxation in brackets. Like in every country in the world, we have the brackets, so we have a certain intervals in which we pay a certain percentage. And in Italy also we have the brackets, the progressive taxation system, which starts from 23% up to 43%. So it's a lot of money that you're going to give to the state. This happens when you're an employee, when you have different kind of income from abroad, when you have your property in Italy under rent or your property abroad under rent, and you have to declare this income in Italy because you're Italian fiscal resident, and as an Italian fiscal resident you have to declare all your worldwide income. Now, this is true. It's true also that we have seen in previous video that there are ways of reducing this amount of tax to pay, because in Italy you have the mechanism called detrazioni, which is basically once you have calculated your taxes through this bracket system, you can reduce those taxes, subtract some expenses that you had also as individual, so as a physical person. So you don't need to be an entity to have this power, let's say, to reduce your taxes. But in this video, I'm going to explain you more in details. I want to give you a sort of a tax guide in which you can understand exactly how to skip the RPF taxation, which is the situation in which you can skip the RPF taxation and apply for the special regimes which are using flat taxes or simply other way of reducing with a huge amount of deduction your income which you generate in Italy as businessman, as a self-employed, as a freelancer. So the first thing that we have to consider is that when we move to Italy and we start up a new business, we don't really need to open a VAT position, especially if you make a very small amount of money. This happens when most likely you move to the end of the year, like October and November. Because if you just start up a new business, you are making like 2,000 euro per month, 3,000 euro per month, but for only few months, it's just not more than 5,000 euro. And if you respect this threshold, you can basically pay zero taxes for the first month that you move to Italy. So this is a small trick that nobody knows. This is called the occasional work in Italy. So basically you are declaring that this is your occasional activity because it doesn't have a really big income. And this 5,000 euro, they fall in RPF taxation, but thanks to a specific detraction given by the state, you will end up paying zero taxes and no social contribution. So this is the first step. Whenever you move to Italy, you start up a new business, before opening a VAT position, before register yourself as a professional, as a self-employed, as a freelancer in Italy, double check if your income, if you preview to have an income before 5,000 euro, before the 31st of December of that specific year, then you don't have to pay any taxes, okay? After you pass this threshold, then you can consider to open a VAT position. And we have the famous forfeit regime. So the forfeit regime skip completely the RPF taxation. So you don't have to consider that be 23% or even 43%. Just forget about the brackets. You have only a 5% tax to pay. So there is this flat tax that works for 5 years, the first 5 years, after it becomes 15%, so it's not so much. And the threshold here is 65,000 euro per year. So the rule of the forfeit regime is the following. If this is a new business and a new startup business, and if you just relocate to Italy, automatically you qualify for this, and your income won't be bigger than 65,000 euro, you will pay only 5% taxes. Not on 65,000, but on 65,000 minus a forfeit cost that the Italian state gives it to you based on your code activity. Because whenever you register your VAT position, you have to describe your business and you will be assigned to a code activity, known in Italian Ateco code, known as Ateco code. So based on the Ateco code, the Italian state knows what is your business. And since they know what is your business, they can assign you a forfeit cost, a deductible forfeit cost. So you don't have to account, you don't have to make the real accountability. So that's the reason why the forfeit regime is very cheap to maintain, also in terms of accounting expenses. So the states give to you just 40% or 60%, 20% based on your activity, and then you calculate your social contribution, and then you calculate the 5% taxes, okay? So it works like this. Now there is another trick. If you think that you want to stay in Italy just 1 year and you pass this threshold of 65,000, you can keep the forfeit regime up to December of that specific year. So basically, you can keep paying 5% taxes here with plus infinitive. Okay? So you can make million and still pay 5%. The only constraint here is that you can keep this special forfeit regime with a limited amount of money only for 1 year. So because after you pass this threshold, you're not obliged to move immediately to the ordinary regime paying the ordinary brackets, the RPF taxation brackets, but you have to do it only the following year. And if in December I close the forfeit regime, I leave the country, I go to somewhere else places, there is no problem. So this is also another trick, that some guys, they just want to go to Italy, they just want to stay just a couple of years. The first year they make just 65,000, and the second year they just exceed and then they leave the country, and they always pay 5% taxes, okay? So this is a very nice trick that you have to keep in mind. This works for basically almost all type of business, but if you have the chance to be graduated, to be a sort of high qualified person, and if you also fulfill the criteria of the impatriate regime, which is the other favorable scheme that the Italian government created to attract human capital in Italy, then your taxation, so let's put it like point number 3, your taxation with plus infinite income, there is no upper limits for the impatriate regime, it would be in the worst case like 4.3% if you relocate in the south of Italy. This is because you'll be entitled to have 90% deduction on your income. And so your income falls into RPF taxation, but since the highest tax bracket is 43, but you have a deduction of 90%, you're going to pay 4.3%. So exactly this is the upper limit, the possible upper limit. Now, the impatriate regime makes sense only when you have an income way more bigger than 65,000 euro. And of course, you follow up all the criteria. So it's not something that easy to achieve. Here in ESENtaxa, we encourage people to write us an email and apply for our consultancy service, because we can discuss and see if you're able to apply for the impatriate regime and benefit for this 4.3%. It's also important to understand that in this tax guide, I'm not talking about the social contribution, which is another calculation that has a sort of importance in terms of a net in your pocket, because the social contribution in Italy is quite high. In the forfeit regime is reduced a lot. Here it's 0. But in the impatriate regime, it might be a little bit heavy, because if you have an income, for example, of 100,000 euro per year, keep in mind that depends on the code activity, but in most of the cases you have to pay 26,000 euro in a social contribution. So this means that most likely the impatriate regime makes sense when you have an income bigger than 150, 200, 500,000 euro, and then you really enjoy this kind of tax rate, and the social contribution is limited always to 26,000 euro. So it's a matter of understand case by case. So we encourage you to look at the description, down the description of this video. We have our link to the consultancy services, and in which we can discuss exactly if for you makes sense, relocate to Italy, apply for the impatriate regime, keep the forfeit regime, or the fourth option, an Italian SRL. Okay, so an Italian SRL is an Italian company, limited liability company, basically, in which you can keep your money in the company and avoid to push all your money into the RPF taxation. The limited liability company has a tax rate of 24%, okay, plus 3% of a taxation called IRAP. So the overall taxation is around 27%. This is in the worst cases, okay. If you want to keep money in your company, this is the profit tax. And of course, the SRL is an entity and you are a physical person. So basically, as a physical person, you have to withdraw money from the company, and then you have several ways to withdraw money in the company. And here in ESENtaxa, we explain you how to withdraw those money, pay as less as tax as possible, exploiting some royalties things, some tax-free forfeit cost for the administrator of the company, and for example the check meal and these kind of small things that allows you to reduce your tax burden on your payroll as administrator. And of course you have dividend system also, which in Italy are taxed at 26%, okay, all after having taxed the profit. So this is the structure of an SRL. Of course, an SRL makes sense if you pass the 65,000 euro and you're not able to apply for the impatriate regime, okay? Of course, there might be other intermediate solutions, something in between, but the most important thing when you move to Italy and you become Italian fiscal resident is to optimize your taxes, and the first things you have to do is to avoid RPF taxation brackets. You have to always find a way to avoid to pay since the beginning and flows your income in those RPF taxation, because is where the people are paying a lot of taxes. Is the moment in which they complain about the Italian state, because it's a habit, because you have a lot of tax to pay. So what we have to do is to always avoid the RPF taxation, where legally we can. So this is a small tax guide. So this is something that you can discuss with your Italian accountant if you're already in Italy. If you don't have an Italian accountant, if you want to know more about these things, how to optimize your taxes, analyze your problem, how to avoid to quit the forfeit regime and move to the ordinary regime, which is the one that tax the taxpayer above 50%. So just subscribe to the channel, ESENtaxa, write us an email, notification bell please, so you will be always notified when something news happen in our channel, and of course like button to help us ESENtaxa, to help us grow and help the channel grows. In this way we can release more and more video talking about this subject and also more interesting things. Thank you, and see you in the next video.